What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer You Know. And while Lori Vallow Daybell has not completely face planted representing herself throughout this trial, yesterday afternoon, we heard the very specific reason and purpose as to why you should not represent yourself. You are too close to the situation. You will have personal feelings about some of these witnesses and some of the situations and some of the things they said. And it will get you into trouble. And you could end up turning a witness that might be a nothing burger type of witness or a middling witness that may be there to testify about one or two things, turn into a star witness for the prosecution, which is what happened yesterday when Lori Vallow truly gave an unbelievable performance in a cross-examination of somebody who went on a date with her husband that she was having an affair on, and they were in the middle of getting separated and ended up allegedly concocting a plan to end his life. So that's what we're going to talk about today. That's what we're going to watch is the entire cross-examination and just see how Lori Vallow did. Just the background of like how this witness is part of the trial is kind of wild. And to just talk real quick about the direct, basically talked to Charles Vallow for hours, went on a date with him on July 10th, the day before he died. He was charming and funny and awesome. He was very fit and strong. So again, getting a couple little facts sprinkled in there. He was very kind about Lori, especially after everything this witness had heard him say about Lori. Okay. Not a ton, really not a ton. Okay. This witness did not have to be that important of a witness. Lori Vallow, frankly, could have asked her no questions, sat down, and I'm not sure a jury would have even remembered her. Basically, we knew they were talking about Lori. It was obviously something bad. We don't know what it was, but he was nice about Lori, which if I'm a lawyer, I'm thinking Charles Vallow was being so kind about Lori. They didn't hate each other. They weren't at each other's throats. Things were actually pretty good. Even Charles's new girlfriend said that. He was mad because she was having an affair potentially. Okay. And then the state got that Charles was fit. And if he was fit, then if he would have hit somebody with a bat, maybe it would have hurt worse than the injury that Alex Cox allegedly had. Okay? That could have been it. That could have been it. But instead, Lori Vallow goes on one of her longer crosses of this entire trial, calls Charles Vallow her husband the entire time, is in a jealous, just back and forth with this witness, clearly does not know where it's going because she almost steps in it multiple times, and you'll see the judge warn her over and over again, and she still almost does it. Truly, it's so hard to even explain this without watching it. So let's take a listen to how Lori Vallow did. By the way, as a lawyer, you either don't cross this witness or you get 1 or 2 points and you move in and out, right? And that's it. Even sometimes with cops, like Lori Vallow's done okay with some of the cops in this case. But if you remember how the cops have worked into this case, they didn't show up and knock down Lori Vallow's door and handcuff her and drag her out, right? Because some defendants hate those cops and they can't cross those cops because they get so angry when they think about what those cops did. In this situation, the cops ended up on Lori Vallow's side. So she's been okay crossing a lot of the law enforcement, fire department, things like that. But this is the first witness it seems like she's really got some personal feelings against. Because the next witness, which is another lay female witness who seemed like a friend of Lori Vallow's, she didn't even cross-examine her. So we're going to watch this entire cross together.
Nancy Jo, right?
Correct.
And we have not met before, correct?
We have not.
Okay. And you stated that your husband, or my husband, told you that he was going through a divorce. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Your husband, I mean my husband, was that a Freudian slip?
And did you have any way to verify that?
No, I didn't try to verify that.
Okay. So did it surprise you later to...
I hope that nobody ever gets divorced and everybody always lives happily ever after. I am going to assume that most people on the jury, if you have any clue what dating apps are, you don't confirm and like do a background check to confirm that somebody's in the middle of getting a divorce, right? But she's going to go in and try to make Nancy Jo look horrible for dating a married man, basically. That's her strategy on cross to start.
To find out that we were not in the process of it? Okay. So did it surprise you later to find out that we were not in the process of a divorce?
She's like,
Charles was in the process of a divorce.
he was not,
Nancy Joe's like, maybe you didn't know it, but Charles was in the process of a divorce. Trust me.
not in the process of a divorce. Did it surprise you to find that out? You've seen it all on TV where we're not getting divorced.
By the way, I'm going to stop this a lot because just to realize how bad it is, she says so many bad things in a row that we have to stop it a lot. So number one, she's like, did it surprise you to find out we weren't? The state could have objected that Lori Vallow is clearly testifying. Lori Vallow is testifying. Not supposed to. That's not in evidence. You don't testify while you're asking questions. But the state's like, no, go ahead. Dig your own grave here. And then she says, you watched it all unfold on TV. So basically now, making sure if anybody on the jury didn't know, this is a nationwide story. This is something everybody's talking about. Usually you don't want to do that in front of the jury.
Okay.
She's like, okay.
So on the website that you met him, did he say he was divorced?
I'm not certain.
Would you have gone on a date with him if he would have said he was married?
If I would have realized how married he still was, maybe not. But I just met for dinner. I wasn't sleeping with him or anything.
Do you go on dates with married men?
Like literally, she's trying to attack Nancy Joe's character here for being on a dating app and going on a date with Charles Vallow while Lori is engaged in an affair with Chad Daybell, who she eventually marries. Like, just think about that. Is like, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I can think of some diagnoses for Lori Vallow. Happy birthday, Azam. Again, I feel like we've been wishing you happy birthday a couple days, but now it's really getting close here. And thank you, She's Like Texas and Susan C for gifting memberships.
I'm going
Not
to
naturally?
argumentative. I'm going to also object under 611 for harassment.
All right. I'll sustain the objection.
So I don't quite think she got to harassment. I think if a lawyer was asking some questions like this, I don't think it rises to the level of harassment yet. Eventually, I do think she gets there. So that's kind of annoying when the state does stuff like that, especially when the judge sustains it. Later, I think the judge realized, like, to sustain a harassment objection in front of the jury when the defendant is the lawyer. I know people are going to hate on me for this, but you really try to protect a pro se defendant, even though they're getting what they wanted, right? But later, the judge is like, sustained for relevant for that objection, not for harassment, when the state objects again for harassment.
Your Honor, do I not have a right to cross-examine this witness for what she has already testified to?
You can cross-examine her about what she's testified to.
So you did go on a date with a married man,
I went on a date with Charles.
but you did not know he was married.
I knew his divorce was not final.
His divorce was not started.
Okay.
Nancy is, I'll just tell you also, like, sometimes you can just immediately tell certain people are smart. She seems like a smart individual to me. She's not going to get into the mud with Lori Vallow too much. She definitely takes her moments to jab back, but she's not going to, when she agrees with her, it's almost like, you know, when you're fighting with somebody and you're like, okay, you know, it's like you said, okay, but you clearly didn't mean okay. She does stuff like that where I think she comes off as like, I know why I'm here. This sucks. We're here because a good man died. You're here like trying to have a cat fight with me or something. Like, what are you doing? And to me, it really, in front of a jury, it's very clear to me who wins this exchange. And that's not good for Lori Vallow because Nancy Joe's life is not on trial.
Okay. So in your text messages, you asked Charles if he was a good kisser. Is that correct?
Maybe, sure.
Did he answer that text message?
I'm
gonna
sure.
object to
I'm sure he did.
relevance. Again, 611 harassment.
I'll sustain the objection for relevance.
And I'm glad the judge did that. So the jury's hearing sustained for relevance, not harassment. But like the good kisser thing, it's not relevant at all. Number one, she's like trying to embarrass her. I don't understand. And again, that's somebody only in Lori Vallow's position that somebody else would be embarrassed about something in this courtroom, right? But that's what she's trying to do. Oh, you asked if he's a good kisser. He's married to me. He's my husband. Did you know he was married? basically, you're a skank going out with married men talking about how good they are at kissing. That's what Lori Vallow is trying to set up here. Assassinate this lay witness's character. And frankly, also, if I was the defense attorney, this witness was not interviewed for like 2 years. And she sought out law enforcement to tell them what Charles Vallow told her. Is it reliable? Is it not? You can attack that. You wanted to insert yourself into this case. You tried to. You did X, Y, and Z. As a defense attorney, there was some potential ground to cross-examine this witness. Instead, Lori Vallow did the exact opposite and made this witness a very important and good witness for the state.
And hearsay.
So are you trying to tell me and this jury that you went on one date with my husband and he told you all the details of our lives?
I'm telling you the truth, and that's what I know.
So you spent your whole date getting to know each other, talking about me?
Don't flatter yourself. No, we did not spend the whole time talking about you.
How does the judge not crack a smile there? Like, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, you've got to be composed and not like I feel like that had to be tough. So you spent your whole date talking about me. Don't flatter yourself. It's like, oof. So like, what do you think the jury's thinking? Because they're just normal people. They're not like poised and ready for anything like a judge or a lawyer may be. Oof.
You knew a lot about me, right?
I knew what I've testified to.
What else did you talk about on your date?
Lots of things.
Like what, for instance?
Life, kids, the church, lots of things.
Okay. Did he tell you about anything about our other 4 children?
Yes,
So you knew that we did have 5 children as well?
I did.
Okay. Did he talk to you about my daughter, Tylee?
He did.
Did he talk about his relationship with her?
I don't recall that.
Did he talk about the contention in his relationship with my daughter, Tylee?
I don't recall that.
I'm sure you don't.
And I'm going to object to comments by the defendant made after questions testifying.
Let's sustain the objection.
On your
Multiple times she has done that throughout the trial, and the state has objected a lot to it.
date, you talked about my husband was a life insurance salesman. Is that correct?
I knew he did something with money and insurance, but I really didn't know the details of what he did for work. Like I said, I don't ask the details about what someone does for work when I'm trying to get to know someone.
But you knew that he sold life insurance. You stated that.
I believe that I had a vague understanding that he did something with insurance.
And then he brought that up again at dinner.
No, we didn't talk about his work at dinner.
I thought you said you did talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said you did talk about that he changed the life insurance policy at dinner.
Well, you were asking me if we talked about that he sold insurance, which that didn't happen. But yes, he did tell me that he changed the beneficiary of his life insurance policy at dinner.
Did he tell you how much?
It's a very weird thing to talk about, right? They met each other like July 3rd. They went on a date July 10th and he dies July 11th. And we're supposed to believe this lady knows everything about his life. Again, all things a good criminal defense lawyer can really bring out and say, really? You met the 3rd, you went out one time on the 10th, you texted with him, you called, and you know all this. If you told him about life insurance policies of his wife, it's very strange. Very strange. Now, it could absolutely be true. But for defense attorneys poking holes and showing maybe bias and her trying to insert herself, that's how you would attack this witness. And I don't mean attack her personally or anything like that. I mean strategically to show the difference between how a defense lawyer would do this and how Lori Vallow did it is just light years difference. And this is the witness that it's most just so apparent that she screwed it up. And you don't know when it's going to come if you're a pro se defendant, just FYI. You don't know which witness is going to piss you off, which witness is going to say the wrong thing about your husband, your kid, your friend, you, your religion, that you're just going to go in there and all you're going to do is see red and you're going to blow it. And the jury's going to notice it and they're going to hate you. You just never know when it's going to come. But most trials that are about your life, something like that is going to trigger you, which is why you should not represent yourself.
Which his life insurance policy was for?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
$1 million.
Did he tell you how much my life insurance policy was for?
I do not recall.
You don't recall?
We didn't talk about you very much in that vein.
And again, right there is an opportunity. Oh, you didn't talk about me very much because you just said for hours you talked about me and you know everything about me, right? That would be a good exchange. And Lori Vallow does pick at some of that, right? She picks at, you didn't know him very long. She does pick at, you just said you talked to me for a long. So she does pick at some of it, but just she goes down these roads that are just the wrong move, just the wrong move.
When did you talk to him about me very much then? If it wasn't at dinner, was it in your text messages?
We were talking about what he was going through in the process of separating from you, not about what your life insurance policy was worth. And we talked about you.
You talked about what his life insurance policy was worth, right? It's like, it's not that weird of a question for her to ask, what's my life insurance policy if you know his?
On the phone, and when I say you, meaning what he was doing as he was going through this separation.
So let me understand. You were dating some different men on this website, right? From the websites.
Sure.
Would you say it was common for men to be talking so much about their supposed ex-wives during their conversations with a potential?
It's actually very common.
And again, you're asking questions you don't know the answer to. I have no clue if it's common or not. So for her to say it's common, it's like she's the one that's been on the dating website. So I don't know. The rural juror said, Lori Vallow definitely opened the door to the kids going missing and their deaths with the next witness. I can't believe the prosecution didn't kick it open and run through it. So here's what I'll say. I do think that the state wants to be careful because if they do really run through it and bring up the old kid, you bring up the deaths of her kids, she's cooked, she's getting convicted 100 times out of 100. If you think you're winning and you can win without that, that's better because that'll be a major appellate issue. She's a pro se defendant. Did you as the state and you as the judge protect the process enough to not basically just force her to open the door? And then, and by the way, whatever Nancy Joe was going to say, we'll kind of hold this, but it wasn't going to have to do with the kids because she didn't know that at the time. That didn't happen at the time of Charles's death. So we will talk a little bit about that. But if you really get into the kids, you're opening up a big appellate issue. So you better be sure that there is no question that she opened the door.
Really?
Really?
Interesting.
And again, Your Honor, I'm
All right.
going to object to the defendant making comments after her questions.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I won't do that again.
All right, please stop.
I'll just ask the questions.
Thank you.
So she knows she's doing it, right? Part of her manipulation, maybe.
So there were some text messages between you and my husband after the dinner on July 10th. Is that correct?
Correct.
What time would those text messages have occurred?
After dinner,
What time?
10:45-ish.
10:45 to what?
I'm not certain, ma'am. After dinner.
10:45 to midnight? Maybe?
I just told you I don't know. Maybe.
What did you discuss in those text messages?
And I'm going to object to relevance again. If there's a specific area.
Sustained.
You testified a minute ago that Charles told you a lot of things about his wife. You didn't say ex-wife, but you said wife. Is that correct?
Okay, sure.
What were a lot of things?
The things that I've testified to.
This witness, by the way, you can clearly tell she knows what she should talk about or can talk about and can't. And she could have forced her way into inadmissible testimony all the time. She could have caused a mistrial. She didn't. She kept trying to give Lori Vallow the benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm not supposed to talk about this, Lori. How do you not know that? And I know this. So all the stuff they talk about is, it seems like there's even more there, like some horrible things about Lori Vallow, potentially character assassination that the judge didn't allow in. But she tries to say everything I've testified to. She tries to do everything she can to make sure she's staying within the rules of what she can and can't testify to. Live from the raw, same.
Can you be more specific?
Am I allowed to do a narrative then?
Let's go on sidebar.
Sarah, I don't feel like it is disrespectful if you're talking about the witness. I think she's trying to just not argue with Lori Vallow over stuff that doesn't matter. That would be my guess. So I think they were. I mean, he was living in Texas. She was living in Arizona, but they had worked it out before, and he was looking for a place in Arizona. Were they going to work it? I don't know anybody's life, right? Definitely seems like, based on the timeline, she was with Chad at the time. But the point is, from this person's perspective, look at her. She's smirking at the jury right now, which is not a good. I didn't even notice this when I watched the first time. That is not a good sign for Lori Vallow, because I will tell you, when jurors start smirking at me or my witnesses, or like giving me the nod, like, we get it, we get what you're going through, it ain't good for the other person. But it seems like that would be where the timeline is, Josh. There are some good questions about juror questions and other things I'm going to save until we get to the juror questions. Very important, Chris K. I promised Peter I would correct the record. Rebecca's birthday week is next week. I provided incorrect info, made Peter appear to be misinformed. I was misinformed. I apologize for any confusion. Good. And this reminds me of like those horror movies where they hold up a paper behind a camera and have somebody read it. That's what I just felt like this was for Chris. Azam said, also today is my, and including her birthday, tomorrow/today, is my 2 years, 10 months, 7 days as a member. It's worth every penny. I'll graduate from the Lawyer School of Law in June. Yes, 3 years is the law degree. And Favo said we need that on merch. I agree. I do like don't flatter yourself on merch as well. So now they're going to go to some sidebars. They're going to continue to talk about this. Then they're going to take a long break for lunch. But everybody right now is trying to protect Lori Vallow from wading into water that is damaging to her, inadmissible, and will severely hurt her case. Yet she is not picking up on those hints. This is what advisory counsel is supposed to be there for, and be like, Lori, you don't want to do this. And it doesn't seem like she did it here in court, but maybe she did it at lunch, because we'll see what happens after lunch as well. So we're going to skip the sidebar.
But the court reporter being able to hear.
They send the jury out.
That's about
And they're going to have a little discussion here with Lori Vallow without the jurors there, so they can potentially talk about some things that are inadmissible, so the jury doesn't hear it.
was along the lines of the last question the defendant asked of the witness was along the lines of what things did you discuss about me, meaning the defendant? Is that correct?
That's
Yes.
what I recall, Your Honor.
Are you sure you wanted to answer that question? Because you're open up.
That's like when I play chess with Maverick and he makes a move where like it's obviously not a good move for him. I'm like, are you sure you want to move there, Maverick? And he's like, no, I think I'll try again. He picks up on it. Lori Vallow's not picking up on that. Are you sure you want to ask that?
A really big door. If you want her to answer the question, I'll have her answer the question.
How am I supposed to know what a lot of things are?
All right. If you want her to answer the question and there's no objection from the state, we'll
No
bring
objection.
the jury back in and have her answer the question.
State's like, fine with us, Judge. Go ahead and let her.
All right. Let's bring the jury in.
So then it goes into this break. So I don't know if they actually did bring the jury back in or not, and there was no cameras. I don't actually know what happened there, or it just went to break and they sent the juries out for lunch. I don't really know what all happened there. Okay, maybe you guys do. Siobhan said, "What door is there, Peter?" So the door of, and I don't know, right? Because I haven't heard her testimony. She is not going to be able to. Future said she thinks they went to lunch. But I don't know what this witness knows, but hours and hours, hundreds of text messages, phone calls, and the date about talking about Lori Vallow. My guess is she had Lori Vallow threatened me. Lori Vallow did this. They're planning something. All this speculation and stuff that Charles was talking about some other people with, the issues Charles had, how horrible Lori was, all of that is probably what they're not letting her get into on the stand as far as her discussions with Charles. So opening the door to all of their conversations about Lori is bad for Lori, And the judge has already found that it is not going to be admissible. Siobhan also said, you think like a lawyer, so you think like a juror for a living, like a lawyer. Give us your thoughts on how they took Nancy's tone, sad tone about JJ, his death on the news, etc. Please. I think, based on that smirk, because I don't see the juries, it's kind of hard for me to tell you how a jury's reacting without seeing them. But based on that smirk, if they're with Nancy and they feel like, same girl, we're with you, like we feel like this is brutal and like she's a jealous wife who wants all the attention and she keeps calling her husband, even though we know that her last name is Daybell now, and they've already heard that name as somebody she was potentially having an affair with. My guess is Lori Vallow was not dead in the water prior to this witness. I think she had made some points. I think the state had done like okay, not amazingly well. They're laying a lot of background. They're finally getting into, like, one of the later witnesses of the day testified that Alex Cox said at a different time he wanted to end Charles Vallow's life. Those are the important connections they're going to have to start bringing in to show an actual crime was committed, not whether CPR was done or things like that, where everybody was standing. So they're still building foundation. They haven't hit it out of the park. They've definitely not proven this case beyond a reasonable doubt. They've given a good, solid motive, but now it's really developing. Now they're seeing Lori Vallow. The generally bad guy rule is now being applied to Lori Vallow. Is the jury looking over there at her like, seriously? I don't know, like a lot of the country does that's been following all of her cases. I think there is a chance after this witness that that's exactly how the jury is looking at Lori Vallow. I just don't know the answer because I haven't seen the jury. All right. So after all that, it seemed like she was going to open the door and walk right through it. We take a break for lunch and she doesn't. So I don't know if standby counsel at that point was like, hey, don't do this. You don't want to do this. Trust me, you shouldn't do this. The rural juror says, I don't know if we'll go over it today, but this is the only one we're going to go over today. With the next witness, Lori Vallow basically asks her why the witnesses reached out to Kay during the time the kids were missing. Yes, and I do remember that, but that doesn't necessarily open the door. There's some discussion about it. There's going to have to be some that's very far from opening the door. Really has to be her using the kids as her defense, which I think she has started to kind of do, or say like Charles was abusive. There's different ways I think she could potentially open the door that I can't get into right now because I want to get to this cross and we don't have a ton of time because we've got about 30 minutes left. But we will talk about that. How can she possibly open the door and if it happens throughout this trial? If you guys want to, of course, hit that like button. If you are following this case, if you're interested in more updates on this case, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you are subscribed. Take a second and subscribe to our channel.
Hancock, you said that you had seen on TV that my husband had passed away. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you indicated after that you saw my sister-in-law, Kay Woodcock, on that show and you reached out to her. Is that correct?
I didn't indicate that, but that is correct. I reached out to Kay after I saw that Charles had died.
Okay. And did you do that through Facebook or
I did.
social media? Okay. How many times between that first contact and now have you and Kay Woodcock communicated?
I've spoken to her just once. I've texted her here and there.
So we're about to hear how she reached out to the cops. She reached out to Kay Woodcock. She went up to Adam Cox, Lori Vallow's brother, at a pickleball tournament recently. So see if you can do this, right? We're going to do it in hypotheticals, which you're allowed to do with experts, and you guys are expert jurors at this point. So we're going to do it. Assuming a defense lawyer was standing at the podium and they're like, you reached out to the cops about this case, right? Nobody reached out to you. You reached out to Kay Woodcock. You reached out to Adam. You wanted to be a witness in this case. You inserted yourself here, right? Would that have been decent at poking the holes in the credibility of this witness to try and show some kind of bias? Would that have worked for you? Or do you think this witness is just too likable and too honest and you were going to believe what they said? It's a difficult hypothetical, but I think there were ways to turn this witness into, mas o menos, right? Like, yeah, take it or leave it, here or there, decent, okay, not an amazing witness for the state. I do think that is possible.
Regarding, I've texted her here and there about other things. I don't know what I can say.
Okay. How many times have you texted her?
I have no idea.
Like more than 10?
Maybe.
Okay. Have you ever turned over those communications to the state?
No.
You know what, Francis? You're right. And that's coming up. The correction of how she actually met Lori's brother, but I'll hold that till we get there because you're right.
Did they ask you for them?
No.
Okay. Did you ever turn over the text conversations you had with my husband to the state?
I was never asked, but I understand that they retrieved them via having them through Charles' phone.
Okay.
I would have had I been asked.
Okay. Did you turn over any other communications that you had with anyone else regarding this case to the state?
I don't believe I've had any other regarding this case to turn over to anybody, so no.
Okay. How many times have you spoken to this prosecutor?
To Ms. Kay,
Yes, to Ms. Kay.
I met with her once in person and one other phone call, and then just text messages about the logistics of being here today.
Okay. How many text messages would you say?
I have no idea.
More than 10?
I know court was running behind, so she had to text me to come at a different time. Probably counting yesterday and today to redo the time, more than 10, yes. Prior than that, probably no.
Okay. Did you have a meeting with her to prepare for this testimony?
I met with her once,
How long was that meeting?
an hour, maybe an hour and a half.
Okay. Was anyone else there?
No,
Have you ever spoken to my brother, Adam?
All right. So here's where another very strange thing happens, right? Like right when you think it's weird and it can't get weirder, it does. This is the story of Lori Vallow. And I answered how she answers first because that's how I remembered it. That's the first way I heard it. But then the correction is even weirder than the initial answer.
yes, but only because I ran into him at my grandson's pickleball tournament the other day.
And how did you know
That's why I thought she had run into him or met him at the pickleball tournament.
that was him?
Because I've seen him on media via the situation surrounding you.
And I do appreciate Nancy Joe, by the way. I think she is really careful to not say something that is going to be prejudicial and inadmissible. But a lot of talk about media in this cross-examination. It's been all over TV. I saw your brother in media talking about this case. So when they see him come, it depends on how the jurors think, right? If I was a juror and I'm hearing all this talk about media and I hear them say the brother was out on media all the time, and then he comes and testifies against Lori Vallow, I'm going to be like, so obviously the media is against Lori Vallow, right?
So you initiated a conversation with him?
I just said hi, and he asked me who my grandson was, and I pointed it out, and that was the end of it.
Okay, so people think, and I don't know this, podcast, meaning he has his own podcast, so it has nothing to do with this? I don't know. Carrie, yes, nobody invited me. I think that's a little messed up. She did say grandson, so they may be a little young to play pickleball against, but I don't take it easy on anybody.
So you introduced yourself to him? To my brother?
I don't know that I introduced myself, but maybe.
How would he know who you were?
I don't know that he knew who I was. I knew who he was.
So again, she's really digging in here, which is what makes it very weird when the turn comes of how she actually met him.
So you went up and talked to him?
I did talk with him, yes.
He didn't call you over, so you went up and talked to him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you were talking to him, you told him you were who?
I told him that my name was Nancy Jo Hancock.
And did he recognize that name from something?
can I go back and change how I met your brother? I forgot this until right now. So
Yikes. Like, that's not great. And again, defense lawyer would have a heyday with this, to me. I think they would have a heyday with her being like, hold on a second. Now that I've given you like 20 answers of how I interacted with your brother, let me go back and tell you the truth, is what it sounded like, right? She botches it. Lori Vallow just completely botches how she tries to deal with it.
on a dating app, got this until right now. So on a dating app, your brother's picture came up on my dating app. And I sent him a message and said, but he had a different name that he used, not Adam. And so I just sent him a message and said if he was going to use someone else's pictures, he should probably pick someone different than Adam Cox.
Which again is a bit of a rip. Like, to me, like, maybe you don't want to be associated with all that, Barb. Completely irrelevant, which made me think, why did this happen this way? Sometimes it does, and lawyers can have a heyday with it. Like I said, that's a mistake by the witness. And she says it was catfishing. Was it actually catfishing? I think it, and again, because of how weird and confusing the story is, I think it actually was him, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I just think it's so strange that series of events and how it came out.
That's how I met him.
That's how you met my brother, Adam?
Correct.
Do you know what perjury is?
Absolutely.
I object, Your Honor, to
It's a question.
argumentative harassment.
Argumentative.
How long was this conversation that you had?
Argumentative.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I completely missed the perjury question because I got an email that was important. All right, hold on. Let's listen to it again so we can properly react.
Adam?
Correct.
Do you know what perjury is?
Absolutely.
I object, Your Honor.
You know what perjury is? Absolutely. That's not what you do. Right? And yet, of course, that's how Lori Vallow tries to handle this situation. When she's finally given something that could be good for her defense, she totally botches it. Sustained objection. Jury's not supposed to consider it. Of course they did hear it, but it's totally irrelevant. Melissa said, Peter, hold on. I want to save that, Melissa. There was a couple I wanted to save. Nina, why do you think the state won't call Colby Lori's son? She told him Charles died of a heart attack. I don't know. Honestly, I want to see how the state presents their whole case because I think there's a couple different ways you can go on this. So I think we should react more to what they didn't do after they're done. Although I have heard, somebody else said, prayers for Colby. He's going to be in court today for the trial. So if he's watching it, I assume he's not on the witness list and not going to testify. So I don't know. The rural juror, do you know what perjury is? Okay, Lori Vallow. Yeah, it's a pretty tough look. It's a pretty tough look for Lori Vallow. Robin said, I understand they want to ensure Lori gets a fair trial, but if I were a juror, I'd be upset to find out after the fact she unalived the kid. So here's what I'll say. Lots of people in lots of cases are upset about certain things that don't come out at trial. And I get it. I totally understand. Sometimes I argue those things should come in, but the judges have to make the decision on what's correct in the rules of evidence. There's a lot of balancing on what's prejudicial versus what's probative, what's relevant versus what's not, what's reliable versus what's not. And there are going to be people that disagree with judges' decisions in basically every trial as to what does come in and what doesn't come in. But I completely understand where you're coming from. And I wouldn't be surprised either if the jury was really upset, especially if they come with a not guilty verdict and then they find out everything else that they know. Priya, could Lori have access to YouTube/LawTube? She says she has like a tablet and I think she has a computer to do research on. I don't know if it includes things like YouTube. I'm not positive. Lisa, Peter, does the advisory council make a record of their advisements for appellate issues? I don't know this answer. I would say no. No, it's all confidential, the conversations they're having with Lori Vallow. So the answer is no. But that's an interesting give her the benefit of the doubt. The answer is no, they shouldn't give her the benefit of the doubt. So I don't think they do. But this is an interesting concept. Interesting. Peter, do you have a free Karen Reed shirt? No, we do not. Lynn, yes, Peter, glad you did this. Coming in on the tail end. Question, why didn't the prosecution walk through the open door in regards to the kids missing when called K? I don't think it opened the door in the way that maybe everybody in the world is waiting for the door to get opened. Just because she mentions the kid being missing doesn't mean the jury now gets to find out about all that because it's so prejudicial. I don't know if the judge, said the door was open and go ahead, you can go through it. I think the state would, but I just think you have to be very careful from what I mentioned in the beginning. You don't want to create an appellate issue, especially if you think you're winning the trial.
Question.
Argumentative, harassment.
Argumentative.
How long was this conversation that you had with my brother at the pickleball tournament?
A couple of minutes, maybe less.
And how many times had you communicated with him before that?
Only that message on that dating app. Besides that,
One message, one time?
I don't remember. I think he messaged me back and it didn't continue.
So just the one day then? Maybe several messages in one day?
I might have sent him one other message, but it was just one interaction and there was nothing further.
And you did not schedule a date with him?
I did not.
Okay. Have you ever spoken to Brandon?
She was going to go through the whole oh, my brother, you schedule a date with him. Let's go through why that's relevant or not in this case. Miss Artemis Fowl, how is it possible to bring in statements of deceased people? So there is an exception to hearsay if the declarant is unavailable, and that's one of the reasons, but you can't use it if you are the one charged with making them unavailable, right? So they're still a balancing. Just because you have that exception doesn't mean everything comes in. So it still has to be probative or more probative than prejudicial, and there's still all the other rules of evidence that affect that. Peter, what about when she tries to blame Tylee for the shooting? Then can I bring up what happened to her? Not necessarily when you say blame her, if she was the one trying to be protected, and if they have statements from Tylee that back that up, that's not opening the door. L. Gibby, my first ever live. Glad to be here. I'm glad you are here.
In Boudreaux? Ever spoken? Okay. Have you ever spoken to Brandon Boudreaux?
Yes.
Okay, when?
He attends the same church that my daughter does, and he happened to be at their house briefly, and I didn't really speak to him. I just knew that that's who he was.
And how did you know who he was?
Because my daughter told me.
It's very obvious to the jury, this is like a bit of, fame. Like there's some fame here to the Lori Vallow situation on the media, podcast, news, TV. People know him. You point him out at pickleball tournaments and whatever it may be. And you're like, I know this person. I know that person. Brandon Boudreaux is the victim in the next trial that is coming up for Lori Vallow once this one ends. What are the boundaries of advisory council? They're different in kind of every state, and I've never done it before, but generally speaking, they can't try the case, but they can tell them this is probably bad for you. This is what this means. But they can't be object. They shouldn't be object to this question. Questions asked, objection, hearsay, like you would do with your partner at a trial. They shouldn't necessarily do that or try the case for them. It's really supposed to be to make sure that the client doesn't completely screw up. And when she's prepping and she has certain questions, you can ask them. Some advisory counsel is I'm not going to talk to you at all unless something big comes up. So it's a little bit different depending on the situation. So somebody just put in the chat that Scotty's 300 through 8, which I love. I have not watched any of the Masters yet. It seems like he avoided the orange jumpsuit this time around. I can't wait to catch up on it. Probably not be until tonight. I'm just way too busy today, unfortunately. I love watching the Masters. I absolutely love it. T-Mar said, imagine how she's going to handle crossing Kay Woodcock. So here was my thought. I actually feel more for Kay Woodcock. It's got to be brutal to look Lori Vallow in the face, knowing what she did to you and to your life and to people you loved. And I mean, I'm not going to go any further than that. Just say it's got to be so incredibly brutal for Kay Woodcock to have to put through this. I feel like Lori Vallow will be able to, gaslight and be like, oh, it's no big deal to me. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe she'll go unhinged. And maybe this will turn into legit Jerry Springer. At times during yesterday, I was feeling this too, Leslie.
Who did she say he was?
Brandon Boudreaux.
In relation to me?
She knows the story and I know the story. So she just had to tell me that his name was Brandon Boudreau.
That he was married to my niece? Is that the information that you had?
I know that he was married to your niece, yes.
Okay. Just the association is all I was asking. And you did speak to him that time?
Well, I don't believe I spoke with him.
Okay. Yeah, but you met him? Or
I don't know that I even met him. I was there. He was there with some other people and I knew that that's who that was.
So you didn't introduce yourself to him?
I did not.
Okay.
So somebody asked, what's the point of all this? If you're trying to create a bias and that she's inserting herself and making sure she knows everybody involved and getting famous off of this case, and you know this case is in the media, in podcasts, on TV, so you're making sure you're not just talking to Charles Vallow, but you're becoming a witness in the case, getting streamed so everybody can watch you. You're meeting Brandon Boudreau, Adam Cox. Like if you're building that, it can be relevant as towards bias. Lori Vallow is not really going anywhere with it. So I get why people are like, I don't even get the point of this.
Did you speak to any other law enforcement besides Miss K? Not that she's law enforcement, but did you speak to any other law enforcement about this case or be interviewed?
Yes.
Who? Who did you speak with?
Detective Moffat is who interviewed me.
I agree, Kayla. I think her advisory council is helping her a ton.
I believe that that's, I might have left a message for him. I couldn't tell you who with, but the only one that I spoke to was Detective Moffat, Nathan Moffat.
And when was that interview?
In 2020, I believe in April. A long time ago.
Okay. How long was that interview? About?
It was a telephone interview and it lasted 45 minutes, I'd say.
Is that the only law enforcement that you spoke to besides the prosecutor?
Yes.
And how long between that interview with Detective Moffat and your first communications with Ms. K, how much time passed in between there?
With Trina K?
Correct.
I met with her just a month ago, 5 weeks ago, and I gave an interview in 2020, so.
Is that the first communication you had with Ms. K was 5 weeks ago?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Hancock, were you aware at the time of your date that I did not know that my husband was on dating websites and dating women?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
She's also testifying to what she knew at the time. That's a good one right there. Like the fact that she came back around to that question. Jackie T said, do you think Lori Vallow was trying to get her to slip up before Smith trial? So total speculation on my part. If I just had to guess, Jackie, I think Lori Vallow wanted to fight with this woman and be like, you're a bad person for dating my husband. I'm a good person. All you guys did was talk about me. He didn't care about you. He just cared about me. That's why he was talking about me. He went on dating apps that I didn't even know about. And you're over here going out on dates talking about, are you a good kisser? When he's talking about me the whole, that's what I think she wanted to do. And this gave her the opportunity to do that. Most criminal defendants who are, on trial for their life don't get the opportunity to do that. She got the opportunity and she took it. Michelle L., this is a better question. Why did the prosecution call this witness? So maybe they were great at projecting this was going to happen, but in reality, I really think they just did it to give the jury the fact that they should have a bad taste in their mouth about Lori Vallow, just like this witness did. Charles knew something was wrong. Charles was complaining about her. Charles, knew the insurance was going to be a big deal, and Charles wanted a divorce. Did they need this witness for a lot of that? Maybe not. But I think that's generally what they wanted to get in. The rural juror, can you explain what her defense is? It doesn't seem like her question is pointing anywhere. So I think her defense is it was self-defense. That's what I think her defense is. What does any of this have to do with that? I'm not so sure. Touche said, at this point, it feels like Lori Vallow is grandstanding and just enjoying the limelight and a project to keep her from being bored in prison more than anything. Bet she'll do the same in the next case. I tend to agree with you. I didn't know what to expect since she literally didn't say anything in her first trial, where like her life was actually on the line. Now she's already in prison forever. But I tend to agree with you. That's what it's feeling like.
Were you informed by him that I knew of the situation of us being separated?
Well, he was under the impression you were having an affair, so him moving on was a natural effect from.
That's now in evidence, folks, that Charles Vallow believed Lori Vallow was having an affair. I mean, I don't remember if it came into evidence or not before, but during Lori Vallow. So why did the prosecution call this witness? Well, it would have been good enough to call this witness just to testify that Lori Vallow was having an affair. Now it's in thanks to Lori Vallow's questions. That is bad. This witness also sets up a timeline prior to death. Okay, but I mean, I feel like they had that, but yeah, little things. I think this witness did some little things for the state and then ended up exploding into a great witness for them.
From that?
He told you that?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Just to recap, you said that you met my husband Charles, on July 3rd. Is that correct?
Approximately. Did you ever take a day?
And you went on a date with him on July 10th.
Correct.
So that was what, 7 days later?
Approximately.
So would it be fair to say that you knew my husband for a week?
Approximately.
Okay. And then you had no contact with Charles after that, correct?
Well, he was dead, so clearly I didn't have contact with him.
Again, like, what kind of a question is that? And again, a perfect, quick answer. Like, no, I couldn't because of you. She was also there to testify that Charles was the beneficiary or changed beneficiary. Yes, but we know that multiple different ways, right? We know that from Kay. We know that from the policy itself and when it was actually changed. So again, I don't think she was like a material, necessary, huge witness. She sure turned into one.
Okay. And it wasn't until you saw that he had passed away on the news that you reached out to anyone. Is that correct?
Correct. I didn't know he was dead.
And that was about 6 months later? Is that correct?
I believe it was December, so July to December is 5 months, I believe.
Okay. And then you found Charles' sister, Kay Woodcock, my sister-in-law, yes?
Objection asked and answered.
I'm just going over the timeline, Your Honor.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
So when is the then you're referring to?
So at the 5 months later that you said in December, after that is when you contacted Kay Woodcock?
To express my condolences for her brother passing away and wanted to let her know that I had had dinner with him that last night and how much he loved JJ and how excited he was to see him the next morning. And just
Thank you, that's enough.
I think that was Lori. We're only looking at the back of the heads, but thank you. That's enough in the middle of her talking nicely about Charles, which Karen said, this witness personalized Charles for me. That's got to make you cringe as a jury, right? Talking good about the victim who you keep calling your husband and you crack the whip to stop that.
how much he loved JJ and how excited he was to see him the next morning. And just
Thank you, that's enough.
Even the witness like smirked like, wow, you are really something special, right? Like you are something special. And I my vibe is the jury's probably feeling the same way, but that's brutal.
I'm just recapping here, and you contacted her through Facebook, is that correct?
And again, asked and answered.
I don't think that was actually asked yet.
think it was.
Overruled. Go ahead.
yes, as I said before, I contacted her through Facebook.
Okay.
A smart witness always says, yes, I've already said that. Yes, I did contact her through Facebook.
And then sent a few text messages, is that correct?
That is
Yeah.
correct.
This is recap of everything we've already
Right.
gone through.
The state's like, yeah, you can't recap. Like recapping and summarizing and asking the same things over is literally not allowable under the rules. That's asked and answered. It's cumulative. We don't need it. We don't do it. She doesn't understand that because she's not a lawyer, but judge, we need to shut this down.
And then you said you met with police on April 22nd, 2020. Is that correct?
I didn't say April 22nd. I said I believed it was sometime in April.
Okay.
And I didn't meet with them. It was a telephone interview.
Okay. And that was around 1 year after my husband passed away. Is that correct?
Well, July to April would be 10 months, so.
No more questions, Your Honor.
All right, redirect.
And on redirect, she hits a couple points, but doesn't go too far because Lori just did her own damage. We are going to get to the question the jury had for her. And finally, Buzzman, I know you sent this very early on. Peter, is it normal for the jury to be able to ask questions? That was strange. Much love from Louisiana. It's really jurisdiction by jurisdiction. And we've gone through what states allow it, what states don't. Very normal for me. Florida allows it. I love it. Throughout the trial, you get to know where the jury's thinking, where their head is. I've literally used juror questions to prep future witnesses. I write every single one of them down. So during closing argument, I try to hit on the things that are important to the jury because who cares what I think, right? We are all there to care about what the jury thinks and what the jury is going to decide. I love juror questions. Melissa said, question, if the jury were to ask about the kids, would that open the door to what happens to them? No. If a juror asks a question about a topic or just generally a question that is inadmissible or that a judge has already said is not going to be coming into this trial, they just don't ask it. They tell the jurors, listen, you guys can ask questions, but some things you're going to ask that, we can't because of the rules of evidence. Some things we can't ask because of other things. So don't take anything from that. It's not like one side or the other doesn't want you. The judge is making the decision. We will ask the ones that we can. We won't ask the ones that we can't. So it's no big deal if you want to ask a question that we can't. Just know the rules don't allow us to ask it. So that would fall under that rule, that if it's an inadmissible question about something that the judge has already declared to not be part of this trial until obviously once the door is open, if it does get open. So the juror is not going to open the door with a question, that won't be allowed. Hi, Uhtred. Nancy Jo's testimony was mentioned in the state's opening as it was able to establish the insurance was the motive, my husband. I agree. I remember it being mentioned in opening. I just think they could have gotten a lot of this information, if not all of it, from other witnesses, but they did the right thing by calling her, obviously. Alex Duncan said, Peter, advice for LSAT/applying to law school, get the highest grade you can, take the course. There's YouTube things you can do to study for the LSAT. Law school is basically all about your GPA and your LSAT score. I've done some videos on it. I do some members only lives where we talk and we go into depth on it. I only have a couple minutes left here for this video, so I can't go much deeper than that, but LSAT and GPA, absolutely most important. Study, practice a million times. I practiced a ton of LSAT tests in real test taking conditions. If I got up to go to the bathroom, I let the timer keep rolling just to make sure I had it down pat. Okay, so let's go to the jury question and let's see if this gives us any indication as to what the jury is thinking or feeling about this witness.
To you verbally, ever expressed to you verbally any indications of stress?
So the question was, did Charles ever indicate to you verbally that there was stress?
Definitely, he was very worried that.
I think we'll just keep it with a yes/no answer for this.
We don't want to get into too much hearsay, but her answer was yes, definitely. He indicated that there was stress. So what is the jury trying to figure out? Did Charles know something bad was going to happen? Was Charles worried? Is that why he switched to beneficiary? Is that why he was doing X, Y, and Z? Did he think Lori was planning something with Alex, which ended up coming to fruition? Was Charles stressed, which once again makes this witness incredibly material because she talked to Charles in the days leading up to before he was killed, and he said he was stressed, and they talked a ton about Lori and problems with Lori and changing of the life insurance. That to me is a huge win for the prosecution, and now they know where the jury's mind is at least so far with this witness.
Question. Does the defense have follow-up based on that juror question?
believe she's talking to advisory council, but she ends up saying no.
Does the defendant have follow-up based on that juror question?
Oh, no, Your Honor.
All right, state.
No.
All right, you can step down. Thank you.
The state had to feel like, wow, we just hit a home run with that witness. Even in our wildest dreams, we couldn't have thought it was going to go that well. Sydney said, what are the consequences, if any, of Lori asking the same questions over and over? Thanks for covering this. Just objection sustained. You can't ask that, move on. And maybe it, flustering her a little bit or making her look bad in front of the jury. That's pretty much it. Mabel said, why can't they talk about the previous killings? That's why they are there, isn't it? It's pretty relevant because it's why this trial is happening. So it's not legally relevant. It's not why this trial is happening. All of that happened after, and all of that does not tend to prove or disprove whether she did this. What it does do is say she has the propensity to do something like that, and propensity evidence is not allowed. So just because she killed them means she killed him is how a jury would look at it. That's not allowed. You can't prove a case like that. So, and it's obviously incredibly prejudicial. So any probative value of the reason they're not there, the judge found was outweighed by the prejudicial value of, if you tell the jury that, they're going to cook her for sure on this. I think it was the right decision for the judge. And that's why Lori Vallow needs to make sure she does not open the door for them to talk about those killings post what happened to Charles Vallow. If it would have been before, they did talk a little bit about what happened to Charles Vallow in JJ and Tylee's trial. Summer Golden said, Colby said on his channel that he hopes he's not called, and if he is, it won't be the result Lori thinks. He's very done with her manipulation. Yeah, it seems like she thinks a lot of these witnesses might be good for her. I'm not so sure they would be. And I know I did the reaction to when Colby and Lori spoke on the phone, so I know at least they kind of have been talking. I don't know if there's been any mending of the relationship, but even if there was, kudos to Colby if he does try to do that. I don't think that's going to change his mind about what she's been convicted of doing and what she has allegedly done here. Brianna, did you apply to any out-of-state law schools? I applied to one law school, one college. That's it. Florida State University. That's where I went. The Harvard of the South, people call it. And I'm so happy I did. So please, if you guys have not hit the like button, take a second and do that. Make sure you are subscribed to our channel as well. We're going to continue to cover the wild moments of this case. This was the peak of wildness to me, but I have a feeling she's going to testify. She's going to have a closing argument. She's going to call some witnesses. So I think this is only the beginning of what's going to happen in this Lori Vallow trial. We will continue to do our breakdowns of it whenever something pops off. Make sure you guys are hitting me up on Twitter at LawyerYouKnow, on Instagram, Tragos Law. Give me a follow on there so you can send me whatever it is you're finding on this case or whatever is interesting and whatever you're having questions on. Obviously, when Karen Reed's trial starts next week, I'm going to have two trials that I'm going to be trying to somewhat follow at the same time. So it'll probably be some highlights of this case, and I may miss a witness here or there or just get a summary of them from Twitter, since there's a lot of people like Nate Eaton who are covering it beginning to end, which is awesome, live tweeting from the courtroom. But that's all we got. So if you guys have already hit the like button, I guess we can get out of here. Till next time, peace. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a pase you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouKnow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.